It's Friday. Good morning, 6:05 a.m. This is the Morning Buzz. We've got so much to get to today, and I'm just jumping right in today, folks. Usually I like to give like a little monologue or something, but I mean, I have so many articles, so many stories to get to today. The world is crazy. As always, you can see me live in studio, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. We're also on Rumble. I suggest you go follow us on Rumble. Subscribe to my channel. That's Cat Petersen 929. You can check it out, the YouTube channel. We did this to ourselves, proclaims a Portland woman who was a victim of this savage attack. It's brutal. And it was hard for me to even get through the video here where she's explaining the attack, and she's blaming the city of Portland for the slow police response. Uh, but we're going to listen to that clip. She's not blaming the police here, folks. She's not against the police. She's against the city for defunding the police and causing this slow police response. Next, a young man who I'm going to get to speak to today. His name's Marcus. He's going to be joining me here in the 8 o'clock hour. He got arrested for reading the Bible. I talked about this story a lot yesterday, but it turns out that he went to his city council and he gave this powerful speech. So I want to play that speech for you here. And we are going to be visiting with Marcus, talking about, what he kind of has a central Illinois tie. We have a mutual friend, Joanne Knipmeyer. She's the McLean County Republican. She's a part of the McLean County Republicans there. And I got connected with him, and he's going to be joining me in the 8 o'clock hour to talk about how he was arrested after reading this Bible verse in the park near some drag queens who were gyrating in front of young children dressed in women's lingerie, grown men. So we'll be talking about that later. ABC trying to blame Kamala Harris's historically low approval ratings. I haven't seen approval ratings this bad ever. And that's a historical fact. Maybe there's one other vice president who has had pretty bad polling numbers. But we're going to get to it because ABC is trying to say it's because she's a female and she's black. That's why she has historically low approval ratings. Give me a break. Give me a break. All right. Stop me if you've heard this one before. Just stop me. Stop me, please, if you've heard this one before. An innocent person was viciously attacked in a progressive city. Okay, yes, you've heard that before. Yeah, I bring you at least probably a story every other day that talks about how there's innocent people being viciously attacked in these Democrat-run cities. So I'll get more specific. This is Portland, and this woman was attacked by a homeless person, and she's lucky to be alive. I told you in Chicago, there's 65,000 homeless people right now. 6,000 of those 65,000 have no shelter at all, which means there's 6,000 people in the city of Chicago that just bum it. They bum it on the park benches, on the sidewalks, and they just sleep there. So this woman, she's lucky to be alive. She's going viral now because she's got a video clip of herself out there admitting that the city is to blame for this. So this is significant because a lot of times what people will say is that, oh, it's our fault. It's the poverty. It's the blah, blah, blah. It's, we're too racist and blah, blah, blah. No, she calls it out for exactly the way it is. She says it's the city's fault. This is her story. Mary, um, 1 minute, she was walking with her friend down a sidewalk. They were going for a walk. And then she woke up on the ground with blood just pouring out of her mouth. And she thought she was about to be killed. She thought she was about to be killed. So she was knocked unconscious by a homeless person and waited over 20 minutes for the police to arrive. No doubt they were busy dealing with other crimes, I'm sure, violent or otherwise, in that city. It tends to be the trend there in Portland, Oregon. Let's take a listen here to Mary's story about how she was knocked out and who she's blaming. And pay close attention because she's not blaming the police officers. She's blaming the city. Here we go.
hold the police accountable for this at all. I hold our city accountable for defunding the police and making it, you know, we're in this situation where we don't have enough police force to protect our citizens, and we did this to ourselves. All I knew that I was bleeding. I didn't really feel any pain at the time. I thought we were still being sort of attacked in some way, and so I managed to call 911. I was very calm, but I was also very sure I was gonna die. My head, I was like, I'm gonna just try to verbalize a report of what's happening so there's some record of how I died. No policeman came. I do not hold the police accountable for this at all. I hold our city accountable for defunding the police.
She was telling us about how she blames the city, and Portland was really bad even before the 2020 Summer of Love. Summer of Love is what they were calling those 2020 BLM riots. We know that to not be true. They were not mostly peaceful protests. They were mostly fiery. Yes, there were buildings on fire. I will never forget there was this store owner. She was just a elderly woman in Portland. And while the 2020 BLM riots were going on, there was this Antifa member. She was dressed in all black. You really couldn't see her face. You could tell she was definitely some sort of woman. And she was taking, I think it was a chair or something, and she was trying to take down the barricades of this. Looked like a small business. It wasn't a big box store or anything. But this Antifa member was trying to break down the barricade. I mean, there were store owners who were barricading their small businesses with wood. They were putting these wood planks over the windows so that way the people wouldn't go in there and loot their store. And this little elderly woman in a walker, she had the BLM sign, in her hand, and she was holding the BLM sign. Whether or not she actually believed in the BLM cause, I don't know. Maybe she just had the sign so that way she wouldn't be um, beaten to death. But she had a little walker, and she was begging this 20 odd something female dressed in all black who was trying to break down that barricade. She was begging her not to go into her store. So it was her store that was barricaded, and she was just this elderly woman with a walker, and she had a BLM poster in her hand that she had hung up on her walker. And, if you want my 2 cents, I guarantee that elderly woman, she did not like the BLM movement. She did not like the Antifa busting down her store, and she didn't understand the movement or like the movement or care about the movement. But the reason why she had the poster, it was almost like an insurance policy where, hey, if I show them that I'm one of them, maybe I'll get out of this with my life. So I'll never forget that. But even before 2020, Portland was bad, but then 2020 happened, and I mean, these urban areas with high crime, and also couple that with the virtue signaling from white liberals, they decided to defund the police in the name of tolerance and equity. So after 2020, Portland defunded the police. The police budgets, they were gutted, and then the officers ran towards early retirement because they had their families to think of, and they became targets of these desperate Democrat politicians. And now these laws are all watered down in Portland, just like Chicago, just like Illinois, where it's pretty much legal. I've seen it before here in the Bloomington Walmart with my own two eyes, people shoplifting and nobody doing anything about it. Shoplifting has become legal ish. I think it's like $1,000 or something like that. If you steal less than $1,000, then there's no penalties for that. And the penalties for committing crimes, like violent crimes, they're just laughable. I mean, you get a slap on the wrist nowadays. And of course, this is what caused the songwriters to get this idea for that song, Try That in a Small Town. All of this, everything Portland is exactly why the songwriters got this idea for that song, Try That in a Small Town by Jason Aldean. Now, this woman is right. The people in the city have no one to blame but themselves, same as the other progressive cities like Chicago. This is Portland. You wanted this. You voted for it. There is an option. There's an option, folks. There's an option. If if you continue to vote for all of this, you're going to continue to have this rampant crime. But you can change who you vote for, and you can realize that the policies that have caused Portland to turn in such a crap hole is because you voted for those politicians who created those policies. So there is a way to get out from underneath this. Portland just has to vote differently. Okay, do want to shift gears. Marcus Schrader is a story out of Wisconsin. He's kind of, got a local tie here. He was on some sort of speech and debate team with Joanne Knipmeyer, her son or her child. And Marcus, I brought this story to you yesterday. He's a young man, Christian, and he was arrested. This is happening in the United States. He was arrested for reading the Bible in a public park. Yes. It just so happens that in this public park, there were men dressed like what I like to call them Bratz dolls. They look like Bratz dolls, and they were gyrating in lingerie in front of children. So Schrader, Marcus Schrader, he addressed this incident to his city council. The young man here is not backing down. I had goosebumps when I saw him getting arrested. When he was arrested by these police officers. I mean, and then there was the video was taken down from a lot of social media platforms. So I do want to share his speech. It was a powerful speech that he gave to his city council, Marcus Schrader. Here we go.
But if we're going to reject the Christian worldview, then we can't hold on to the fruit that comes from the Christian worldview while denying the actual foundation. Intolerance is an interesting word. Tolerance, intolerance, hatred, love, bigotry, things like that. Because really every culture has something that it's intolerant towards and something that it's tolerant of. I mean, there are things like murder and rape and stealing and just crimes that we are intolerant towards as a society. And so every society has something that's intolerant towards. The question is just, what is our object of intolerance and what is our object of tolerance? When I showed up Saturday, all I did was read from scripture on the sidewalk. I read from the Bible, Galatians. And by the way, I wasn't reading Romans 1. I wasn't reading any passage that spoke against homosexuality or anything like that. I was reading a passage from the Bible about love. And I was arrested. No reason, not given any warning, not told anything about my amplification needed to be turning down. I was arrested and taken into custody simply for reading the Bible on the sidewalk. You see, as we become more and more tolerant of sexual immorality in our culture, we become more and more intolerant towards Christian morality. And the more we become intolerant towards Christian morality, the more we're going to see lawlessness in our streets. The more we become intolerant of Christian morality, the more we're going to see Nazis. The more we're going to see people who don't hold to a Christian worldview, who think that everybody is a result of animals, and therefore if we are animals, then why can't we just act like animals? We were called a hate group. We were told that we don't want to understand the other side, and I just want to set the record straight. I am more than happy to have that conversation with the other side. I did speech and debate throughout high school, and one of the things that we were taught in debate is that you can't make an argument for your side until you're able to make the argument for the other side. I've sat down and had hours of discussions with LGBTQ activists. I completely understand the other side. I want to understand the other side. But drag queens twerking on kids in lingerie is unacceptable. And
It's unacceptable. So very powerful young man. I can't wait until he joins me here in the 8 o'clock hour on the Morning Buzz. And folks, I am live in studio. You can see me on YouTube, Facebook, Rumble, and Twitter. We are going to be unpacking that a little bit here on the other side of this break. Plus, we've got to get to Kamala Harris because apparently it's because she's Black and a woman. That's why she's so unpopular. She has a historically low approval rating, and ABC is trying to blame her historically low approval rating on the fact that she is Black and a woman. Okay. I'll be back here on the other side. You can text in at 309-451-9299. You can also call. I'm going to be taking your calls. I'd like to do this on Friday. Call in. I've got a question for you. Have you ever felt like you were prosecuted or persecuted for being a Christian? Have you ever gone through something similar to that of this young man, Marcus Schrader? Have you ever felt like you were being discriminated against because of your Christianity or because of your religion? Give me a call. It's 309-451-9299. Hey, good morning. I so do appreciate it. Now, the leftists out there, they're like, Cat, I bet you're only anti-cop when it comes to white Christians being arrested. That's not true. Um, this is not the way of the police officers. And um, hi, hi, how are you? Good, good, good. Here, hold on. Let me mute me. We'll be right back, guys. Oh, you won't believe this, folks. You're not going to believe this story at all. Huh. I came across it. I came across the desk this morning, and I thought to myself, well, the end of the world is upon us. So this woman, another story out of Portland. I did a bit this here this morning, 6 a.m. hour, about this Portland woman who was beaten and she thought she was going to die. She's very lucky she made it out alive. She gave this powerful speech about how it's the city's fault and how them defunding the police is what caused this. And there was another story out of Portland. She was denied cancer treatment after criticizing transgenderism. So there was this big old transgender flag at the reception desk. She wrote it wasn't a scathing email, but it was an email expressing, "Hey, I feel uncomfortable with this transgender flag sitting here at reception while I'm receiving cancer treatment." Guess what happens? They email her back and deny her and ban her from receiving treatment from this hospital in Portland, Oregon. That is a true story, folks, and I've got the emails to prove it. Libs of TikTok, they obtain those emails. So we are going to dig into that story. I'll read those emails to you, the proof, the evidence. And then also, I've got this former DC cop who's just a loon. He was calling former President Donald Trump a terrorist, and he compared him to Osama bin Laden. These people are wacky. So we're going to be talking about that here coming up in just a little bit. But before we took the break, I was talking a bit about a gentleman who we're going to have in the 8 o'clock hour. I'm so excited. He's a dynamic young man, and he went to before his city council, gave a very powerful speech. And, he kind of has a background here uh, in speech and debate. And Joanne Knitmeyer and I, are good friends, and I saw that she was mutual friends with Marcus Schrader, who was arrested by police officers in Wisconsin for simply reading the Bible, folks. I saw the video. All it was he was on a public sidewalk. He had like an amplification device, but there's so many different preachers, pastors, people who go out there. I mean, in Chicago, you walk around the streets of Chicago, there's somebody entertaining or somebody preaching on every other street corner, right? There's always people who are out on sidewalks with amplification devices. And me being me, a little bit nerdy with sounds, I saw his amp device and I was like, "Oh gosh, that little guy is like
He needs
nothing."
better.
Yeah, I was like, if they're arresting him for that little boom box, it's like essentially a boom box that he had, and I'm like, "Wait a second, they arrested him for that?" Like unlawful use of amplification. It has to go over so many watts and stuff like that in order for it to be unlawful. Some city ordinances. I would have a hard time believing that little amp device actually was against the city ordinance. I haven't dug into the nitty gritty of the ordinance there in Wisconsin. But Joanne Knitmeyer actually knows our friend, Marcus Schrader, who was arrested for simply reading the Bible. So tell me a little bit about the connection there and how he's got kind of a local connection.
Absolutely. So we competed for 7 years as a family. Our son at a young age was interested, and so we competed for 7 years in a national speech and debate league. And our region was a 6-state region. Marcus, obviously, from the Wisconsin area, us from Illinois, but all of our competitions brought families from all of 6 states. And so at our tournaments, we would literally spend 3 to 4 days, depending upon the schedule of the tournament. And those days were long, 7 at night till 11, or 7 in the morning till 11 at night. So our children got to know each other. They spent time together. They competed together, but it was a Christian speech and debate league. And he talks about in that video about knowing both sides of the argument. And when I think about these young people who are willing to listen and engage in dialogue, they are not there to start the argument. They're to understand and to raise, and to awareness. And he did that very well.
Yeah.
And so for
Well,
me watching it was just heartbreaking because heartbreaking in one sense, and actually sort of a joy because the mission of our speech and debate league is to know God and to make him known. And so these kids are doing that and to glorify, his word wherever
Mm,
they go.
mm.
And so for him to do what he has practiced doing for so many years, was really, you hope you equip your kids well in the things you want them to know. And he stood solid on what he knows and what he believes.
And having that conversation with the other side is key. And he said that you can't make a strong point against an argument if you don't know the other side, right? He said,
Absolutely.
look, I'm willing to sit down and have a conversation and understand the other side. And he did mention, though, there is a line, and he says drag queens twerking on kids in lingerie is just unacceptable, and that's something that we have to notice in our culture. So I'm so glad that you're in studio, Joanne Knitmeyer, talking about his background with the speech and debate team. I wish I was a part of something like that. Not that I wasn't. I was involved in youth group and all of this stuff growing up. But when I got to college and I asked people to call in, I said 309-451-9299. Have you ever felt like you were discriminated against for your religion in some sort of way? Have you ever felt like it was hard to speak the gospel? Have you ever found it hard to uh, have a conversation about Jesus? So me, I wear a cross around my neck. Not wearing it today, but I wear a cross around my neck. And I was at college, and there was a young girl who asked me, "Don't you feel like wearing that cross?" I was doing all kinds of interning for a TV station and things like that. She said, "Don't you feel like wearing that cross, especially on camera, is going to offend people who aren't Christians?" And I just kind of, didn't even bother debating my side, didn't even use that opportunity to share the gospel, right?
Mhm.
Obviously,
Mhm.
this is a atheist girl I was going to college with, and she felt offended, right, by my cross. And that was clear what was going on there. And she had asked me about it. And that would have been a perfect opportunity to ask her, well, hey, what do you believe? Hey, this is what I believe. This is why I wear this. And I wasn't equipped with the skills that Marcus has here,
Right.
clearly,
Absolutely.
to defend my side or to share the gospel or to use this as an opportunity. I think nowadays I would be able to, because there's been different things that I've been able to learn
Right.
since my college days. But I kind of just broke down. Like I just kind of like said, yeah, well, you're probably right, and I stopped wearing it. I know, and I
Absolutely.
respected this girl, I liked her, she was my friend, and I was just thought to myself, and I stopped wearing it. And then I realized, towards the end of my college career, last semester, I put it back on, right? I got a new one, and I put it back on. So, yeah, that was a personal story, but I just think that Marcus has the ability here to know both sides, and when you know both sides, you won't feel like you're not able to argue your side. So, really interesting that he kind of has a local connection. So,
Yes.
was he from Illinois? I don't know. I'll
No,
have to
he
ask
he
him.
is from Wisconsin. He is from up in
It's
that
just
area.
kind of
And there's a
a
large
national.
speech and debate club called Salt and Light up there that he was a member of. And so I believe that was the club he was in.
Hmm.
And so there's little clubs in various areas. So even locally in the Mackinac area, there is a speech and debate club called SciBad. And then here, it's Illuminate. It's a smaller club in our area. But I also know that some of our Christian schools are now adding those components. So there have been several from Cornerstone that have competed in our league that we have. And I know Calvary is starting a speech program this year, because knowing how to, like you said, teaching how to stand on your voice and your belief, and how to not engage argumentatively, but how to be able to engage in a discussion, right? So
Mhm.
you raise those arguments, but you're trained in a way that it's not combative all the time. And I think that is our problem today is there's many that just want it to be combative, or only their side listened to.
Yeah. Well, and one thing that I we'll have to say here about Marcus is that he tried to find some common ground, I think. I don't think he was out there looking for a fight. I think he was trying to find some common ground, and tried to have a discussion because he's honestly concerned about the moral decay. Now, there are times where it's impossible, and I wanted to bring this up. The baseball fans tried to find common ground when it came to that LA Dodger Stadium,
Correct.
right? They were like, okay, we're totally cool with a Pride Night. I mean, we get it. It's California during the month of June. But can we not have blasphemous drag queens dressed as nuns, dressed as Jesus, stripping on the cross? Can we not have that? Uh, but the other side has no interest in having a conversation with us about those things. And we've said, hey, we're totally cool with the, drag queens performing for adults in bars. We're fine with that. But then they said, well, let's get kids to dress up and let's have kids perform in drag in front of adults in bars. And we said,
Right.
whoa, 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 this isn't appropriate. And the left doubled down, and then they created these drag queen story times. And we were like, guys, let's leave the kids alone. Can we leave the kids alone? And I just don't think that the left is interested in the same things that Marcus are interested in, and that's a conversation.
Right.
The whole reason why I named the show Morning Buzz is because, one, you get buzzed up on news and buzzed up on coffee. Joanne brought me some coffee this morning, and I'm guzzling it down. But a lot of times when I had an issue with somebody, I would invite them out to a cup of coffee or have a cup of coffee, because there's nothing that we can't talk about over a cup of coffee. And
Correct.
it's good to get a little news buzz going on, but it's great to have your coffee, so that way you can, really just sit down and have a conversation about this. But they don't want it.
Correct.
I don't think that they want it. And that was clear because he got arrested. Right. So the city, I don't know what exactly happened there, but clearly somebody did not want to have a conversation so badly that they were willing to put this young man in cuffs.
Correct. And my question to my husband was, I wonder how the police would fare in a different city, because if that was resisting arrest and you watch the video at the park, I can't imagine them with a resisting arrest in Chicago or in a big city, because nothing about that looked like it was resisting if you really watch it close.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh no. He was just like, whoa, what are you doing? Like, they put his hands on him before they even said he was under arrest.
Correct.
I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And now
he was more trying to talk to the police officer that took the microphone. I don't even know that he was aware the person behind him was even grabbing his arms.
Yeah. Yeah, it was insane, that video. And it's been taken down on social media platforms. And I'll let you guys guess why that is. But
right.
one thing I did want to talk about was this. I'm getting a lot of this. Well, Kat, I thought you were pro-police. Are you only pro-police when it comes to them taking down Black people? Or is it just because he's a white Christian that you are talking about police in this way? This is not police. This is Nazism. This is authoritarianism. And what has happened in these liberal communities, now this was in Wisconsin, I'm sure it's a liberal community of some kind, or at least the city officials are, whoever is in charge of that police department. What has happened is they've defunded them so bad, all that's left are bad cops.
Right.
That's all that's left there. So these people aren't the blue. When they say, oh, I thought you were so back the blue, Cat. No, no, no. These people are not back the blue. This is a blatant violation of the First Amendment.
Correct. There is actually a post on the police department's website that started out as a canine post from a week ago, but everybody has been voicing their opinions, and it is amazing the number of either police families or back the blue people who have quoted on there that exactly that. Your job is to protect the citizens and to protect their constitutional rights. Like, you're taking that oath, and these families saying, like, this is not proper police protection. Like, this was not that, And so it was interesting reading in that thread the number of people connected to either Back the Blue or from police families that also disagree with their decision.
Yeah. Well, Joanne Knipmeyer, tell me a little bit about, before we go, the picnic that is supposed to be going on. This is a McLean County Republicans picnic.
Absolutely. Our annual picnic this year is going to be on August 13th from 4 to 6 p.m. And this year we are moving our location. We're actually going to be out at the Hesed House in Hayworth, Illinois.
Hmm.
And Congressman LaHood is going to be joining us and giving us a little bit of an update and talking to us as well. And then it's just a great time. It's a nice family event. There's going to be barbecue for the adult meals. There's going to be pizza for the kids. We usually have games that they can play and things like that. It's a great time to get together and know what's happening in our area locally as well as at the federal level with Congressman LaHood joining us.
So how do we, are there tickets?
There are tickets, $18 for adults, $10 for children, and you can get them on the McLean County Republican website.
Awesome. So, Joanne, thank you so much for joining me here on The Buzz. I so do appreciate it. And we are going to be talking with Marcus, a now mutual friend of ours. I'm hoping through this interview that we become friends. I'm sure we will. That just tends to happen. Marcus is joining us in the 8 o'clock hour to talk about how he was arrested for reading the Bible on a public sidewalk. So we're going to talk about that. Joanne joined us here in the 6 o'clock hour. We'll be back. I also need to tell you a little bit about Donald Trump, that arraignment that happened yesterday. I'm going to break down the arraignment. He pled guilty to all of those charges, or he pled not guilty, folks, to all of those charges. I'm jumping ahead because I know he's going to be convicted of these charges, but I'll walk you through what happens after that conviction and how this isn't anything new. Jack Smith has gone after Republicans since the dawn of time. We'll be back. Oh boy, this is a must watch. Okay, so I am live here in the studio, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Rumble. You can see me in studio. I've got one thing that I want to get to here before we get into the story about Donald Trump pleading not guilty to 4 of these charges. Yesterday, he was arraigned. We're going to give you an update on that, and I'm going to walk this out. What it looks like after he's convicted, because folks, we know he's not going to be getting a fair trial in Washington D.C., especially when it comes to this loony Obama Obama appointed um, judge. Okay, so she is contributed to the Obama campaign hundreds of thousands of dollars, like just so much money poured into his campaign. She is convicted, and she has sent J6ers to prison. She's very harsh on J6ers. So she has a record of that. So I'm telling you right now, he's going to be convicted, and I want to walk out what that looks like for Trump down the road. I'm sure we can kind of guess what's going to happen here, because Jack Smith has actually done this before to Republican presidential candidates. He's done it to Democrat primary candidates, anti-establishment, anti-Washington D.C. politicians. He's done this multiple times. So I'm going to unpack that. But first, this is a must watch, must see. You got to listen to this. 20 minutes of mainstream Democrats, computer scientists, election security experts warning that the election system here in America is online, that it's easily hackable, and often running on Windows 7 or older operating systems. Okay, so this is Democrats talking about this. Let's take a listen to it here, because I'm waiting for the moment that Hillary Clinton is indicted for talking about how the election was stolen. Here we go.
Virginia just hacked and attacked.
I continue to think that our voting machines are too vulnerable.
For researchers have repeatedly demonstrated that ballot recording machines and other voting systems are susceptible to tampering.
Even hackers with limited prior knowledge, tools, and resources are able to breach voting machines in a matter of minutes.
In 2018, electronic voting machines in Georgia and Texas deleted votes for certain candidates or switched votes from one candidate to another.
The biggest seller of voting machines is doing something that violates Cybersecurity 101, directing that you install remote access software, which would make a machine like that, a magnet for fraudsters and hackers.
These voting machines can be hacked quite easily.
You could easily hack into them. It makes it seem like all these states are doing different things, but in fact, 3 companies are controlling this.
It is the individual voting machines that pose some of the greatest risk.
So here we have a bunch of Democrats sitting here saying that the election could easily be stolen. Jack Smith, he has indicted President Donald Trump. And what's interesting is this third paragraph where he says that Trump, like every other American, had the right to speak publicly about the election and even claim that it was falsely that he had won. He had the right to do that as the president of the United States and as an American citizen. But he's indicting him anyway. I'm waiting for indictments on these. 20 minutes of mainstream Democrats, election security experts. When are we going to indict them for denying the election and denying election operating systems and the voting machines? When are we going to start indicting Hillary? Amy Klobuchar was one of them. Chuck Schumer was one of them. So we'll be back. We're going to talk about the indictment, how Trump arrived at D.C. yesterday at about 3 o'clock. And he pled not guilty to all 4 charges. We'll be back. Plus, Kamala Harris is the reason why she's down in the polls, because she's black and a woman. ABC thinks so. ABC is saying that she's down in the polling because she's black and because she's a woman. Okay. All right. Wink, wink, nod, nod. Okay. Whatever you say, ABC. We'll be back. Good morning. Hey, thanks so much for tuning in. If you're watching right now, go ahead and smash that like button. Smash it and subscribe to the channel. You can look me up on YouTube. If you're watching on Facebook, it's real easy. Just type in your search bar, Cat Petersen 929. You can find me on YouTube and subscribe to that channel. It really helps us out. Now, one thing that I want to get to is this third paragraph. This third paragraph in the indictment is a huge, I mean, it's a flaw. This is what makes the indictment just fall apart. So in the third paragraph, I'm going to quote it here. Quote, President Trump had a right, like every American, to speak publicly about the election and even claim falsely that he had won. So what are you indicting him for? I just don't get it. So the charges here, there's like conspiracy and obstruction of an official proceeding, obstruction of and attempt to obstruct an official proceeding, conspiracy against rights. So blah 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 blah. That's what they're indicting him for. So I'm confused. You just said he had the right to speak publicly about it. He gave a speech at the Ellipse on January 6th. Are you saying that the speech was obstructing justice? I don't know. Like, you're sitting there saying that he obstructed justice, but all he did was speak publicly at the Ellipse. He gave a speech at a rally, and you said he had the right to do that, but you're indicting him. Makes zero sense. Jack Smith has a history with indicting people who the establishment does not like. One of them being former governor of Virginia, Robert McDonnell, Bob McDonnell. So he was a Republican. I think he was going for the presidency at the time here when Jack Smith indicted him. I think it was like bribery charges or something like that. But point is, he scored the conviction against McDonnell, which is going to happen with Donald Trump. He's going to score that conviction because it's a Washington, D.C. jury. And the case here, that conviction was vacated and later overturned by the U.S. Supreme Court. So Trump is going to have to appeal, and get it up to the Supreme Court. And guess what the ruling here was in this Robert McDonnell case? 8-0. Now, let me just really emphasize that 8-0, that decision was huge. The Supreme Court, that rarely happens, and you can bet your butt that that's because the Supreme Court thought that this was an abuse of power on behalf. And in fact, court documents, I'm going to quote them here. The High Court rebuked Smith and warned, quote, the uncontrolled power of criminal prosecutors is a threat to our separation of powers. They said that about Jack Smith in this case. I'll be back here in just a bit. Hold on. Our boy Jack Smith, big yikes. He has had quite a few cases that the Supreme Court has laughed him out of. I mean, there was something against a Virginia governor, Rob McDonnell. He was a Republican, and the Supreme Court overturned a conviction that Jack Smith got against this guy. I'm going to be bringing you this because it's going to show us what's going to happen with Donald Trump. I'll be back for the 7 o'clock hour next. This is the Morning Buzz. Good morning. All right, we are going to be getting into that, but we will also talk a bit about libs of TikTok and how they got this email correspondence between this woman who has cancer, and she was receiving treatment at the Oregon Health and Science University. And she was told she could no longer be a patient at the clinic after she sent a message criticizing the reception desk up there where she was waiting to receive care. And there's this big old trans flag hanging very, very prominently in the entrance of the hospital. So she, being, you know, a gender critic, she does not agree with the gender ideology. She wrote an email, which I don't think was even all that bad. Some people are saying that it was scathing and that it was like mean. I don't think it was bad. I think it was justified, especially if, and we don't know, and I'm sure that she had gone multiple times and requested, hey, can we take this down? Can somebody talk to me about this? So this seems to be an email that is like, has come after multiple avenues of communication where she's like trying to reach out to people and say, hey, I feel uncomfortable with this. I feel uncomfortable with this. And she's not being heard. So this seems like one of the later emails. So she goes, quote, I would like to speak with you directly as I no longer trust that my communications are filtered in good faith by the hospital staff. So that right there kind of indicates to me that she's been trying to communicate to staff about this for quite some time, but she's not being heard. So this is the email following her not being heard, folks. She says, quote, additionally, I do not feel comfortable as a gender critical woman. So she is being very open and honest. She's saying, I'm gender critical, who believes gender to be nonsense and that the sex of our bodies is the reality. I do not feel comfortable coming into Richmond with that enormous transgenderism banner hanging like a Nazi flag behind the reception desk. So she said that she feels uncomfortable going into the hospital where they do the cancer treatments. Richmond is a part of their cancer unit. And she calls it as a Nazi flag. So that's kind of the part where it's like, ooh, boy, this woman's not playing around. Where's the flag for women? How about for children? I've been threatened in the past on Twitter by trans activists with rape and death. So it's daunting to go into a medical treatment facility with that banner proclaiming that what I am, an adult female, calling myself that now is hateful per the OHSU, per the hospital. A woman is a mere opt in category for any gender nonconforming male and not a reality itself. So she's talking about, how she feels like women are being erased, essentially here in this email. And women are being told once again that we are and what we may be, what we are and what we may be. So she's saying that, they're trying to define what a woman is, and that's making her feel erased as a woman. And that men are defining what women should be. So yeah, she goes into it and she talks a little bit more. Nothing like crazy, or she's not mean to people or anything. In this email, she just has made it known that, hey, I've been threatened in the past by trans activists. And this makes me feel uncomfortable having this trans flag flying over the reception desk. Like, tell me again what a trans flag has to do with receiving treatment for cancer. Like, why is the flag there? So her name is Marlene. And according to Marlene, she was later sent this email. So that was her email. Her email kind of just goes into what she feels. And then they write her an email back and they said that she needs to seek, quote, re-education, and that they are denying her treatment and they banned her from the hospital effective it was July 29th. So as of July 29th, she's not allowed to go into the hospital. She's been banned. See, and this is kind of echoing what had happened with Leah Thomas. So the women who were upset about women are about Leah Thomas, William Thomas, being in the locker room, changing in front of them. Those girls were told that they were crazy and that they needed to be re-educated. So instead of trying to treat the mentally ill who are claiming to be a different gender of what they actually are, they treat those who subscribe to reality as the crazy people, and they think that they're in need of treatment. So they said to this woman, oh, this makes you uncomfortable. Well, you need to be re-educated. There's something wrong with you. There's something so wrong with you that we're going to deny you treatment at our facility for cancer, and we are going to ban you from our hospital. We're not even going to let you step foot inside of our hospital anymore. And the world's gone crazy. This is the craziest story I think I've ever come across. It was out of Portland. Yeah. So I'm going to get more into that. Governor J.B. Pritzker, he was well, he was on one this week, and he was like, "Oh, those right wingers, they're twisting things about these non-citizens becoming police officers." So he went on to Twitter and he said that DACA recipients are going to be able to be police officers. JB, DACA recipients are not um, able to carry weapons and obtain weapons under federal law. So I'm going to be breaking that down for you because he's trying to say that it's completely legal via federal law. This um, legislation that he signed, but it's not. So we'll be back here in just a bit. Good morning. Hey, this is the Morning Buzz, and you can see me live in the studio, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Rumble. I'm there. I'm live in studio. The camera is rolling. I see the red light. Means we're live. So you guys can see me in studio. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. It's Cat Petersen 929. Now, DACA recipients, they're actually illegal immigrants. And I'm sick and tired of this newspeak that is going on in the state of Illinois when it surrounds this illegal immigrants and what they actually are. DACA, they are illegal immigrants. This week I've been on my soapbox talking about this DACA recipient who's on the run. Nobody's gotten back to me. The Springfield police has not called me back. I called them a couple days ago asking them, "Hey, is this guy still on the run? Is he still at large?" He's a guy here on DACA. He was here on DACA. He obtained DACA status at the age of 15. He is accused now of stabbing a young girl. Her name is Emma Schaefer. And he was dating her, I guess, and she's dead. A young girl my age, dead. Okay, and he's still on the run, from what I understand. And my question to JB is, are people like this Gabriel Calixto, this guy who allegedly stabbed this ex-girlfriend of his to death, is he going to be a cop now? Because according to your tweet here, JB, DACA recipients are able to become police officers. So apparently, somebody like that guy could have can become a police officer here in the state of Illinois. And, don't listen to people. DACA recipients are not allowed to obtain firearms. Okay, they're illegal immigrants. They're protected from deportation under the Deferred Immigrant Action Program, but the program does not grant them official legal status. That is true. And this is explained by none other Newsweek, a leftist news organization. They explained this in a fact check. They said deferred action does not confer any lawful immigration status. Does not mean you are legal citizen. Okay, you are illegal. It is illegal. You are here on a program. So Newsweek explained that the U.S. Appellate Court in October of 2022 declared the program unlawful. So there's all kinds of things surrounding this DACA program that's in limbo because we all think that it's basically like state-sanctioned human trafficking, if you really want to be blunt about it, because what we're doing, we're taking these children and we're deporting their parents, and not even children. The average age for a DACA recipient is 29 years old. Like it's not even about children anymore. This is just human trafficking at this point. But we're taking people who are supposed to be children, and we're keeping them here, and we're protecting them from deportation because their family was deported and stuff like that. So we're going to be getting into that because JB was on one. He was all, he had his panties in a bunch. I'm telling you, he was upset and he goes, "Well, right-wing critics are saying that we're allowing illegal immigrants." Is the word they use. And he goes, "I'm tired of the right wing twisting these things." Well, JB, according to your own tweet, you said that the law is going to allow DACA recipients to become police officers, and they are illegal immigrants. They are. All right, so we'll be getting into that. But first, I do want to chat about Donald Trump indictment, a little bit about Jack Smith and all of the corruption cases that he has had against people, specifically Republicans, specifically Democrat primary candidates who are anti-Washington, D.C. establishment. He has a history of political prosecution, political persecution. And in this most recent, or in this latest, I think, and most notable is this Robert McDonnell. So he was a Republican, Virginia governor, and I think he was running for president. And Smith scored this conviction against McDonnell. Now, this case was later overturned by the Supreme Court, and I want to emphasize the unanimous 8-0 decision. He knew it was a dud. He got the conviction because it was in a Washington, D.C. court, and he got the conviction. Now, the high court, when it got up to them, the Supreme Court, because obviously Robert McDonnell appeal that conviction that happened in Washington, D.C., and it got up to the Supreme Court. The high court, and I'm quoting here, rebuked Smith and warned, quote, that uncontrolled power of criminal prosecutors is a threat to our separation of powers. Jack Smith's indictment is nothing more than criminalization of political speech. That's it. And the third paragraph is so clear. I've read the indictment. And quoting the third paragraph here of the indictment, Trump had a right, like every American, to speak publicly about the election and even claim falsely that he had won it. So right there, Jack Smith, according to his own words, said that he had a right to speak publicly about the election and how it was stolen. But he's indicting him for it anyway. Does that make sense to you? In his own indictment, it crumbles. It's crumbling. And I don't understand. Like, they're charging him with obstruction of an official proceeding. What? Giving a speech at the Ellipse was obstruction of an official proceeding. Donald Trump wasn't in the Capitol, right? He wasn't the one. Oh, man. So he arrived to D.C. yesterday, goes into the federal courthouse. From what I hear, there was, some leftist protesters, not a whole lot. There was talk about him going in virtually, zooming in or something like that. He was fingerprinted. There was no mugshot taken. I'm telling you, if there was a mugshot taken, that thing would blow up. Donald Trump. I mean, that would be the new MAGA hat. People would love the mugshot. I mean, I think I'd make it my Facebook profile picture, my Twitter profile picture. But Donald Trump, he pleaded not guilty, all of this. He was fingerprinted. The next hearing is going to be August 28th at 10 a.m. 10 a.m. So I think it'll be 11 a.m. Central Time. I think that's Eastern. But he pled guilty. There's all kinds of charges there. Now, one thing I wanted to play for you today, before I get into this cancer patient who was denied treatment in Portland after criticizing transgenderism. There was a transgender flag at the reception desk in this hospital. She, said, "Hey, I feel uncomfortable about this." And they denied her cancer treatment and banned her from the hospital because she was spewing out hate when it comes to the LGBTQ community. That story in about 5 minutes. But this DC former cop, he was there on January 6th. He's turned into this contributor. His name is Michael. And he compared Donald Trump, equated really Donald Trump to an Al-Qaeda leader, Osama bin Laden, during an appearance here on CNN. We've got to take a listen to this. And I'm sorry I've got to do this to you this morning. You're going to be like, Cat, please, why? Why are we listening to Michael on CNN? He's an idiot. I know, but you'll see what I mean here in just a minute. Here we go.
Riley, and I told him how proud I felt to be an American at that moment, much in the way that I did when I learned that our military had killed Osama bin Laden. I just felt incredibly proud.
These two seem comparable
incredibly
to you?
proud to have been.
I'm sorry, I don't want to cut you off, but why that comparison in particular?
I believe they're comparable.
In what way?
Absolutely. Osama bin Laden was a terrorist who committed a horrific act against American people and against our republic. And I believe that Donald Trump is a terrorist who committed horrific acts against the American people.
You can imagine that that is a very eyebrow-raising statement, to say the least. The notion of Osama bin Laden in comparison to Donald Trump, it likely speaks to just how deeply you have been concerned and have felt about all of this. But are you concerned that statements like that, or the rhetoric surrounding what his role has?
Enough of that. I mean, you had I'm proud to be an American playing before Donald Trump took the podium to speak at the Ellipse there on January 6th, 2021. He had that song playing in the background. I'm proud to be an American. He even said, go peacefully and patriotically and go protest, make your voices heard. Tell me again that he's a terrorist. Tell me again that he's a terrorist, dude. So one of the ways that you know that the left is just completely, utterly depraved is by who they lift up as their heroes. This guy, Michael, lifted up as a hero. He's a dirtbag. They're celebrating him. And if you did a little bit of research on this guy, just a little bit, like a Google search, okay, you'll find out that Michael, he actually parties with Hunter Biden. He's got a rich daddy lawyer with deep connections to the Democrat Party. Google him. It's clear. People are starting to scrub the results now. I looked it up again this morning, but he's not a sympathetic. He's not a he's not a victim. He's not a saint. He's a phony. And he parties and snorts coke with Hunter Biden, and his dad is a rich Democrat lawyer. Give me a break. Stop lifting this guy up as some sort of hero. He's not a hero. All right. Do want to shift gears. I've got time for one more story. Let's get into it here. Okay. So this is the story I've been wanting to get to because this is just going to blow your mind. This woman was denied cancer treatment. So cancer, I'm sure if it hasn't affected you, it's affected somebody in your family. Cancer is an unforgiving disease, and it kills people. So this woman was denied treatment for cancer. I just want to let that sit with you. Okay. Think about your loved one. Think about even yourself. If you've had cancer, think about what you went through. Okay. So she's in Portland and she's at this hospital and she criticizes the facility for their public presentation of this transgender flag. And it's flying over the reception desk. It's this big transgender flag. You've seen it. It was flown proudly on the White House lawn at the same level as the American flag. There were two of them for Joe Biden's Pride Day or whatever. But the woman in question here, her name is Marlene, and Libs of TikTok. It's a popular social media account, and they document transgender insanity. Whatever the transgenders are doing, Libs of TikTok, they act as an aggregation social media account for that kind of stuff. So the woman receiving the treatment from the Oregon Health and Science University was told she no longer could be a patient at the clinic after she sent out a message criticizing this transgender flag that was prominently hanging in the entrance of the hospital. So she told Libs of TikTok that she was even requested that she go for re-education after she had mentioned that she was upset or uncomfortable by the flag. The hospital suggested that she go and be re-educated. Yes. So I've got the email here. This seems like an email that came much later after multiple communications with different staff. She goes, quote, I would like to speak with you directly as I no longer trust that my communications are filtered in good faith by the hospital staff. So this seems like an email of, I've had enough. I'm fed up. Here's my last email. So she goes, I do not feel comfortable as a gender critical woman who believes gender to be nonsense and that sex and our bodies, the sex of our bodies is the reality we live in. I do not feel comfortable going into the hospital with this enormous transgender banner hanging like a Nazi flag behind the reception desk. And she goes, where's the flag for women? Where's the flag for children? And then she goes into a personal story about how she's been threatened by trans activists with rape and death. And she says that it's very daunting to go into a facility that is supposed to provide medical treatment that has a banner proclaiming that what I am, an adult female, um, a woman, is just a mere opt in category. So she's talking about how she feels erased by this transgender community. They are erasing her womanhood. Okay. So she goes into the email. It's not that scathing, it's not bad at all. Um, she didn't like the transgender flag. She made her voice heard, and she emailed, and then they email her back. And you would think that this hospital staff would have some sort of sympathy, being that she has fell victim to the transgender activists before. She actually has some sort of history here. Um, but they banned her from the hospital. She can't walk back into the hospital, folks. They told her that she can no longer seek treatment there. And then they said that she needs to be re-educated for these perfectly reasonable views. Like, this is all very reasonable stuff, folks. Like, she's just gender critical. And tell me again, what does transgenderism have to do with treating people for cancer? Why is there a transgender flag at a cancer facility? It makes zero sense. But
If you've read Vivek Ramaswamy's book, it's The Woke Inc. Inside Corporate America and the Social Justice Scam.
Mhm.
It's threaded everywhere. And so even in a hospital, even in those types of things, and just like we were talking in the first hour, right? There's no conversation to understand the other side. It's get in line and conform.
yeah, conform to every kink that we are into, right? It doesn't matter whatever sexual immorality we're into, you have to conform to that. Otherwise, you're an intolerant bigot.
Only certain people are guaranteed freedom of speech in that ideology.
Mhm. The voice you're hearing there is Joanne Knittmeyer. She's from the McLean County Republican. She's been in studio with me this morning, talking. She brought me a cup of coffee. Joanne, tell me a little bit before we cut to break about the Republican picnic that's supposed to be happening.
Absolutely. We are going to have our annual McLean County Republican picnic August the 13th from 4 to 6 at the Hesed House. Tickets are $18 for adults, 10 for children, and you can get them on the McLean County Republicans website.
Wonderful. All right, folks, we're going to be back here in just a bit. I actually have a kind of a happy news story for you. I like to pull these out on Fridays. I'll be back. And coming up in just about 10-15 minutes, Scott Robbins joins me for Scott's Takes. Good morning, folks. Thanks so much for tuning in. I so do appreciate it. If you're watching right now, go ahead and smash that like button. I see you watching. The only reason why you're not liking the video is because you're afraid that your boss is going to see that you like this hateful, bigoted content. So be sure to like the content and be a dissenter. Be a dissenter and like the content. So we are going to get into, yeah, that was a crazy story, Marlene. It just goes to show you, I like this comment by David. He says, speaks volumes on where the hospital's priorities lie. The values should be human life, health versus ideology. I 100% agree. Brenda, thanks so much for tuning in. Oregon is a hot mess. That's so true. Well, I'm glad that nobody watches CNN anymore. Yeah, nobody is watching CNN. So this guy, what's his name? Michael Finan or whatever his name is. He was a former DC cop. They drag this guy out and try to pretend that he's some sort of hero. Guy's not a hero. He literally goes on cocaine benders, I'm sure, with Hunter Biden, okay? And he's a big party animal, and his daddy is a big, rich Democrat lawyer. And this is the guy that they're choosing to lift up as some sort of hero. And to sit there and say that Donald Trump is a terrorist and equate him to Osama bin Laden is inflammatory, hyperbole, and it's wrong. And it's offensive because those of you who went through 9/11, I did not. I was too young, right? People who went through that tragedy know what terrorism is, and they know the effects of what terrorism had on the United States after that terrorist attack. And to sit there and equate January 6th to that is absolutely absurd. What happened at January 6th, and I like how Vivek Ramaswamy puts it was all due to pervasive censorship and telling people that they can't talk. And when you silence people and you say, well, you can't talk, then they're going to want to scream. When you tell people they can't scream, then they're going to start to tear shit down. Okay. So, excuse my French, but that's exactly what started to happen. I myself going through 2020, and I've told you guys personal stories about, my family going through COVID-19, my dad almost losing his life, me going through COVID-19 and being very sick, my fault. I was smoking cigarettes. Uh, God works in great ways. I quit after COVID. But um, we went through hell in 2020. They censored you. They told people that ivermectin was horse medicine. My father took ivermectin and it saved his life. Okay. The only reason why I knew about ivermectin was because I was plugged in with people in the community. I mean, I was embracing alternative media. But the mainstream and these fact checkers kept censoring that information. And I wanted to go to January 6th because I was so pissed off. Okay. I even bought a plane ticket and everything. But that's why people showed up to rally to have their voices heard. And Donald Trump asked for the National Guard. He asked for the Capitol Police for some sort of protection that day because there were going to be a lot of people there. And he got none of it. Right. And the feds, right, were all amping people up. And what did you think was going to happen? I'll be back. Hold on. Good morning. Hey, thanks so much for tuning in. You can see me live in the studio. And you can see me on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Rumble. Now, you can see me through the stream. You get exclusive content through the stream. I'd like to continue the conversation for the streamers who are online. So you can get exclusive content there, my radio friends. If you're tuning in just now, 309-451-9299. We've talked about so much already. This hour, we talked about this woman who had been denied cancer treatment at this Portland hospital because she criticized this big old trans banner that was at the front desk, the reception desk. She made known that it made her feel uncomfortable because she has a history with trans activists trying to threaten her on social media, threatened to kill her, right? So this was very triggering for her, this flag. And she was like, look, this has nothing to do with my treatment for cancer. But then get this, after she made a fuss about it, um, the Oregon Health and Science University told her that she could no longer be a patient and went as far as to ban her from the hospital. She can't step foot in that hospital. So they banned her from that hospital. Wild story. Also, we were talking a little bit about Trump arriving in DC yesterday. He pled not guilty to 4 of these charges. I told you about Jack Smith's history with all of these cases where he prosecutes Republicans and Democrats. He was prosecuting some Democrats who were primarying some Washington, D.C. establishment politicians. And he has a history here of, he has no shame. Like, as a prosecutor, I'm not a prosecutor, but I've talked to prosecutors. They don't want to lose a case. They don't want to lose a case. They want to bring forward good cases. They want to be good prosecutors. This guy has no shame. He went to the Supreme Court against Robert McDonnell, right? He had a conviction against Robert McDonnell. He was a Republican, Virginia governor running for president. And the U.S. Supreme Court eventually got the conviction and they vacated it. They overturned that conviction in a unanimous decision, 8-0. And the High Court went as far as to say, Jack Smith, this uncontrolled power of your criminal prosecution is a threat to our separation of powers. They warned him, and he's doing it again against Donald Trump. So the indictment is nothing but a criminalization of political speech, criminalization of, and we talked about this completely phony guy. His name's Michael. He was on CNN, and he was a former DC officer, and now he's a CNN contributor. And he equated Donald Trump to the Al-Qaeda leader, Osama bin Laden. And I've pointed out that if you just did a quick Google search on this guy, you'll find out that he's like best buds with Hunter Biden, and his daddy is this rich Democrat lawyer, and he's got deep connections to Democrats. So that's the guy that Democrats are lifting up to be a hero. Now, before we take the break, I do want to talk about a good news story. I like to bring you good news stories for your Friday. 5 years ago, first grade teacher, his name's Elvin. He sat down in a barbershop for a haircut. So this teacher sits down, haircut, and he saw one of his students walk in. So Elvin noticed that the student sat down and he started to look really antsy. The student sat down in the barbershop and started to look antsy. At that moment, Elvin realized that sitting and waiting for a haircut was the perfect opportunity to practice reading. So he's a first grade teacher and he was practicing reading. He created a charity effort called Barbershop Books, which is dedicated to donating books to barbershops across the country in hopes of solving the problem of childhood illiteracy. Big problem with childhood illiteracy. I think 2 out of every 100 children in public schools can read at grade level. It's a big problem, especially here in the state of Illinois. His effort has been a huge success. As Barbershop Books, the charity, has delivered 50,000 free books to more than 200 barbershops in all kinds of areas, poor neighborhoods in 24 states. So he's in 24 different states, 50,000 books, 200 barbershops. Elvin even takes the extra step of teaching the barbers of how to encourage kids to read by asking kids questions about the books on display. So the barbers, he's been going around to these 200 different barbershops that these books are in. And he's like, okay, barber, you got to ask the kids about the books. And here's a line of questioning in order to try to get them to, use comprehension skills. So I thought that was a really sweet story. And I was like, oh, that's so sweet. I remember I'm a twin. So I remember going into the barbershop with my twin because he'd go to the barbershop and I would have to go to the salon, right? Because he went to a barbershop as a kid. And I remember going in and sitting there, and it was a barbershop in rural America, okay, rural Illinois. So it was like hunting magazines and like gun magazines, like sitting there. And here I am, like reading those magazines. It would have been nice to have a children's book in the barbershop when I was growing up because, man, I was bored. I was like, oh gosh, hunting. Here I am, like a 6-year-old little girl, like reading about hunting rifles. That's probably where my politics come from. All right, I'm going to be back here on the other side. Scott Robbins joins me next. Kamala Harris, okay? It's not because she can't formulate a sentence without sounding like a complete derp. It's because she's black, okay? That's why people don't
I'm
like
so
her.
sick and
God.
tired of that nonsense. That's the biggest lie on the planet. She's listen.
Black. She's black and she's a woman. That's why people hate her.
If they asked you, me, people in doing what we do, if they said, hey, I want you to be a pilot, so I really don't know how to fly a plane. I don't care. Get in there and fly the plane. You'd crash it because we don't know how to fly a plane. I always believe this, and this is something that goes back from my dad probably. He said it without saying it, but it was one of those stay in your lane type arguments, you know? Know what your lane is, stay in your lane, prosper in your lane, work hard in your lane. Eventually you'll do okay. But you get out of your lane, you start thinking you can do something else. That's when you run into trouble. Kamala Harris is a perfect example of that. She couldn't, it wasn't enough to be senator. She wanted to be president. Now, she failed miserably at that, didn't even make it through the first cut in the primary. And then slow-witted Joe decided it was time to announce who he was going to pick for his VP. Well, he put himself in a box, put himself in a corner. It was going to be a woman of color. So that narrows the field right there. So he chose Kamala Harris, despite the fact her own party didn't even really like her. And it's just been a disaster ever since. And when they have her meet with world leaders, and they do this occasionally, Kat, where she'll actually get a job. It's like they got to find something for her to do, right? So they do this. So the head of state of Mongolia is in Washington, D.C., and the head of state of Mongolia and her are doing a joint, I don't think it was a press conference as much as joint statements from the two, because you don't even want to get her into a press conference situation. That's way out of bounds.
Yeah, come to think of it, I don't think Kamala Harris has ever fielded questions from reporters.
I was thinking the same thing the other day. I'm like, when was the last time wait a minute, I don't think she ever has. That I remember.
Oh yeah, well
I mean,
they'll bring up how she actually got into politics, most likely. That's what they're big scared about is, hey, how'd you enter the politics game?
We know what she did to get into the world of politics.
Oh yeah.
Right. I mean, and again, it's as old as time as well. That using that as motivation has been done for millions of years. But at any rate, Kamala Harris decides she's going to say something while the head of state of Mongolia is there that's so profound that eventually you're going to go to accessories and there's going to be a poster with this pearl of wisdom on it. And I'll play it and then we'll talk about what she said. Okay, here we go.
Particular. We will discuss the work that we will do together to strengthen our space cooperation. You and I spoke in particular.
Oh, it's not going to play?
We will discuss the work that we will do together
I don't know.
to strengthen our space cooperation. You and
Ghost
I
in the Machine.
spoke briefly about the beginning of the next
Well,
era.
trust us, it was great.
And for you, what that
It was
particular.
great. I'm gonna
was
try to
great.
find it. I'll try to find it here.
Cat will
somewhere
try.
else.
Cat, we'll try to play it at another time.
Yeah.
When Cat gets it, though, she can play it, and you can refer back to this time and go, "Oh yeah, that was great." Okay, so equipment, man, I'm telling you, this is the time of, and it always happens, and it happens to us too on the other show. I mean, it happens all the time where just equipment just fails. Hey, I want to say congratulations today to Taylor Swift. I know, hey, before you say anything, let me just say, I know Taylor Swift is not necessarily in my wheelhouse, but as a fan of music, I got a ton of respect for her. Not so much for her views or anything else. I can separate the two. But she writes her own songs. She sings her own songs. She's huge. Is there a bigger star on the planet than her right now in that world? I mean, seriously, no one. Not even close. She's making gazillions of dollars. Just announced today she will be extending her U.S. tour. So parents, grandparents, hang on to your wallets. You'll have another chance to spend $1,500 to send your child to go see Taylor Swift. I mean, it's incredible the amount of money she's hauling in. But what she did was kind of cool. She rewarded everybody on her staff, from the guys who set up the equipment to the guys who drive the trucks to the people who run the merchandise. I mean, it's a whole thing, right? So the truck drivers, now this is not anything I know for a fact, but word is that she gave I think like 47 truck drivers on this tour. She gave them each $100,000 in bonus money.
Whoa.
For being a part of this tour. And again, these are things you don't have to do. She just did it. So I want to say kudos to Taylor Swift on that one. All right. And yeah, Kat, I do like a few of her songs. I like Willow a lot, by the way.
What's the one? I like her old stuff, like
Shake It Off.
Shake It Up. Well, yeah.
Okay.
What is it? Love Story. That one
Yeah.
is a good one. I like her old stuff a lot.
Someday, Kat, we're just going to do like a whole 45 minutes of Taylor Swift songs.
where we sing them together.
Yes,
I would
right.
love that.
Exactly. Where we karaoke those bad boys. Saw this too today. Unruly passengers on airlines up 47% globally year to date. 250 in the U.S. alone.
Oh.
Now, I have to tell you something. I've flown a number of times, and you've flown, and we've all flown. I don't ever find it really pleasant.
Yeah, flying.
The experience just is never pleasant to me.
Oh yeah, no.
I'm in a little seat. I'm crammed in a little seat. I worry about my luggage, whether I'm going to get it or not get it. I went to Alaska one time. They lost my luggage. That was fun.
Whoa.
Yeah. But it's just a tense situation. But they're saying they're seeing these unruly passengers now. Former air marshal said this. He said people simply don't care. They don't care. They're self-centered, self-indulgent, and this is what we're dealing with right now.
Mm-hmm.
He said, you see it with the way they treat the police or anybody in authority. And I'm like, yeah, he's right. It's a whole shift demographically of what we've seen in the past. I can remember going to the airport for the first time and picking my grandma up. She's the only person I knew who flew. I didn't fly till I was like 18. No, I was like 23 before I flew. But she flew. Went to the airport, and men would all put suits and ties on. Women would all dress up to go to fly.
Yeah,
that's just the way it was. But I mean, times have changed. People are out of their minds now, and they demand this, demand that, and airlines are under the pinch and crunch, and it's not fun there either. And they said they lost a lot of their good employees during the pandemic, and that you fell on your own sword there.
This sounds like something Pete Buttigieg needs to address.
Well, you would think. Well, yeah. I mean, there hasn't been a train derailment in the last, 3 or 4 months. So I think he's okay for right now. Minnesota is also legalizing weed. I can't believe they haven't already, but they're finally doing it. But they also want millions of dollars thrown into communities that were disappropriately affected by the enforcement of marijuana laws. Think about that for a second. So communities where there was a high amount of weed trafficking going on, they're going to throw money at them, give them money as sort of an apology for what? For what? Upholding the law? I don't understand anything anymore. So this is reparations for the way we behaved when marijuana was illegal? And you're going to give them money?
Give them
Jeez.
money. Give them money.
Just get out of these states, man.
You know who else
Just
sounds
get
nice,
out of
Scott?
them.
I do have the Kamala Harris clip.
Oh, okay. Well, you want to hear it now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is
Well,
Kamala. This is
Speaking
Kamala
about
Harris.
marijuana, I
Yeah.
don't know.
Oh well, that's brain fog that was brought on. Yes, absolutely. So again, this is her sitting right next to the head of Mongolia, the head of state of Mongolia. And again, picture Kamala Harris in her mind. Everything she says is going to be available as accessories on a mug, or it's going to be on a poster of some kind. It's profound, and it's always word salad, garbled mess. We'll talk about it, but here you go. Here we go.
In particular, we will discuss the work that we will do together to strengthen our space cooperation. You and I spoke briefly about the beginning of the next era, and for you, what that means in terms of your leadership and your vision for the future. And certainly strengthening our space cooperation would be a part of that agenda, including, of course, using our space cooperation to think about how we strengthen the economic prosperity and development of our nations. In particular, we will discuss the work that we will do.
Jesus, space cooperation over and over and over again. I have no idea what she just said right there.
No clue.
None whatsoever. I mean, at the end of it, you go, hey, wait, I speak English. I read English. It reads left to right. I'm a fairly intelligent person. Why don't I understand what she just said? Because it's not understandable. Quit beating yourself up. No one understands that. No one does. All right. Hey, have a good weekend,
You
Kat.
too, Scott Robbins. You have a great
And I will talk to you on Monday. What do you
Yes.
got big plans this weekend? What are you doing? You always do something fun.
Well, it's my dad's birthday today. And,
Oh,
and
wow.
Barack Obama's. So
Well, was he here first or was Obama here first?
my dad was here first.
See, then he claims it. Yeah.
He claims it. It's his day. It's his
Well,
day.
happy birthday to Cat's dad.
Yeah.
All right. Talk to you later.
I'll talk to you later, Scott Robbins.
See ya.
All right. We are going to be back, folks, on the other side. That's Scott Robbins. You can find him on social media. Plus, I would stay tuned to Cities 92.9 at 8 o'clock because he's going to be back for Markley, Van Camp, and Robbins. We'll be back. Good morning. Hey, thanks so much for tuning in. I so do appreciate it. Be sure to smash that like button. Here we go. Trump is drowning in his own lies, and Cities is all for it. All right. Good morning, Ezekiel. I was wondering when you would wake up this morning. You're a little bit late to the program today. I don't understand what you're talking about, Trump lies. I've got the video evidence, man, of him saying go peacefully and patriotically and make your voices heard. I have the indictment itself that Jack Smith says that Donald Trump had the right to go out there and publicly speak about how he thought the election was stolen. The indictment itself says that Trump did nothing wrong because, I mean, that's all he did. He went to the ellipse and he spoke about how he thought the election was stolen. Having thoughts, even lying, right? Lying is protected under the First Amendment. Okay, you can lie. This is a blatant violation of the First Amendment. And basically, what Jack Smith is doing here, he's criminalizing political speech. It's the criminalization of political speech. So, Ezekiel, man, I don't know what you're talking about. Trump lies. Even if it is okay, sure. Let's say it's lies. Should he be convicted and have his freedom taken away? Have you never told a lie in your life there, Ezekiel? I'm not saying Trump is lying. I think that the election was stolen. In fact, I have 20 minutes worth of Democrats thinking that the election has been stolen years past because of the election machines. And I mean, I've got 20 minutes worth of audio of prominent Democrats saying that they believe the election was stolen. So, man, I don't know what you're talking about when you say that Trump is lying, but let's go with it. Sure. Let's say Trump has lied about something, which I'm sure he has, right? He's a human being. He has the right to lie. That is protected. It's First Amendment. You can lie and that be protected by, you can't lie under oath, right? Because that's in court, right? And that's different, though. He wasn't in court. He was out there publicly speaking at the ellipse during a political rally. If we start arresting politicians for lying, then we are in a very dangerous country. And Joe Biden should be behind bars, man. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's been multiple times where this dude lies. I've got his lies right here. I can play them for you. We've got Joe Biden sitting there saying that he knew nothing about his son's business dealings. However, we do have a letter addressed to one of Hunter Biden's business partners, Devin Archer, where where Joe Biden himself made it known that he was aware of these business dealings going on with Burisma, Devin Archer. So we're going to be back here in just a second. Good morning. Hey, thanks so much for tuning in. We are going to be getting to our good friend, Marcus Schrader. He was arrested for simply reading the Bible near some drag queens in Wisconsin. He gave this very powerful speech to his city council. We're going to be visiting with him in the 8 o'clock hour. We are also going to be talking about a Portland woman who fell victim to this savage attack. And what has come out now is that she's blaming the city for the slow police response. She says, look, this is what happens when you defund the police. So I'll be talking about that a little bit more here in the 8 o'clock hour. But first, I do want to address, I don't like to do this all of the time, uh, address the leftist in the comment section on YouTube, Facebook, Rumble, Twitter. You can follow me and subscribe to the channel, Cat Petersen 929, or you can text in 309-451-9299. I do like to bring in the leftists, their point of view sometimes because I like to have a conversation. Cities is all for Trump, and he's drowning in his own lies. So I want to address that. Leftists, okay, you think that Trump is lying and that he's lying about the 2020 election being stolen and that he's making false claims that the election was stolen from him. Okay, that's what January 6th was all about. Stop the steal. Okay, so he is allowed, according to the third paragraph of Jack Smith's own indictment, like every other American, to speak publicly about their thoughts surrounding the election and even falsely claim that the election was stolen. Okay, this is all according to the third paragraph of that indictment. Jack Smith makes it clear that Trump has the right to speak publicly and even lie about the election. The First Amendment protects lies. If we start arresting politicians for lying, we are going to have no politicians left or no government, okay? Specifically, I mean, let's take a listen to Joe Biden and his lies, okay? Are we going to start arresting Joe Biden and convicting him of conspiracy or whatever, or because he lies? No, let's take a listen to Joe Biden lying about his knowledge of the business dealings, the Burisma business dealings, and his son Hunter.
I've never spoken to my son about his overseas business dealings. I have never discussed with my son or my brother or anyone else anything having to do with their businesses, period. There is zero evidence of any assertion being made.
How involved were you in your son's Chinese shakedown text message? Were you sitting there? Were you involved?
No, I wasn't, and I don't know.
Were you?
No.
Okay, there's mountains of evidence of Joe Biden lying. We're not slapping cuffs on him and convicting him and taking away his freedom. So, to the leftists in the comments, lying is protected under free speech. I don't think Donald Trump lied. Even Democrats, mainstream Democrats, believe the election has nefarities in it. Michael, thanks so much for being a part of the conversation. Politicians lie? What else are you going to reveal? The grass is green, the sky is blue? Yeah. Mike, so thanks so much for joining in. Yeah. I mean, people are going to sit there and say that he lied about the election, and that's what these leftists, they think that Donald Trump should be locked up because he lied about the 2020 election being stolen. Okay, that's what they truly believe Donald Trump should be convicted for. But unfortunately, we don't live in a banana republic, and lying is covered under the First Amendment. Absolutely wild. So we are going to be talking with a good friend, Marcus Schrader. He's joining me in the 8 o'clock hour. He's a young man who got arrested for reading the Bible, which is also protected under the First Amendment. Our First Amendment is under attack, folks. I mean, we aren't going to have a First Amendment if Donald Trump is convicted of this. Now, I do think the Supreme Court is going to overturn it. So at the end of the day, it really doesn't freaking matter because the Supreme Court is going to look at Jack Smith again and say, dude, this is kind of insane. Like, this is uncontrollable, uncontrolled power. Criminal prosecutors need to have control over their power. Otherwise, you're going to dismantle our government. We have separation of powers for a reason. This was the founding fathers' way of making sure that government and that prosecutor that they don't get out of hand. Human beings are evil. And the founding fathers knew that we are inherently evil. This is why they said that our rights are given to us by God, the creator, endowed by a creator. There was a clear reason why the founding fathers separated our powers of government. And what Jack Smith has done and is doing shows that he doesn't give a damn. He's shameless. He has no regard for the separation of powers in the United States. So we are going to be getting to the young man who was arrested for reading the Bible. ABC trying to blame Kamala Harris's historically low approval ratings on race and gender because she's black and because she's a woman. Apparently, that's why people don't like her. I'm going to take a bet that that's not the reason why. Then I do want to get into this Portland woman. This Portland woman was viciously attacked in a progressive city. And you're like, tell me something new, Kat. This happens all of the time where innocent people are attacked in these progressive cities. But this woman, she's finally coming out there. And I don't think that she's like a Republican. I don't think that she's a conservative in any kind of way. Maybe I'm wrong about that. But she's admitting that the city is the one to blame here. And she and her friend, they were just going for a walk. And the next thing you know, she woke up on the ground with blood pouring out of her mouth. And she thought she was going to be killed. So she gets out there, this viral video. She talks about how she was knocked unconscious by a homeless dude. And she waited for 20 minutes for the cops to arrive. And she said it's because they are defunded. They've gutted the police budgets in Portland and in other liberal cities. Portland was pretty bad even before the summer of 2020. The summer of love, as the Democrats called it. But then after 2020, what happened was, we've combined high crime, white virtue signaling liberals, and they decided to defund the police. They gutted those budgets. Officers ran towards early retirement because they had families to think about, and they became targets. They became targets of these desperate Democrat politicians. So the laws were watered down. There's no penalties for anything. You can shoplift. It's essentially legal if it's under $1,000. I think that's Portland's law. So if it's under $1,000, you can just walk on out, folks. I've seen it here in the state of Illinois. I've seen it right here at the Bloomington Walmart. Somebody walk out with a cart full of crap, and I'm like, what? And I looked at the greeter at Walmart, and I go, you just walk out, and he goes, yeah, it happens sometimes. What? What do you mean it happens sometimes? So we are going to be talking with Marcus here. I'm gonna bring him on. Actually, he's joining us. So let's see. Marcus, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Awesome. Wonderful. We're going to be back in just about 30 seconds. And joining me, you might know her, you might recognize her, Joanne Knitmeyer. She's here joining me in studio today, too. She was telling me a little bit about your speech debate team. So we'll talk about your story. We're going to bring Joanne in just a little bit. And we're just going to have a conversation here in the 8 o'clock hour. We are live right now on the stream, guys. So be sure to smash that like button. We're live on our YouTube, Facebook. But thanks so much for joining me, Marcus. And how do you pronounce your last name?
Schrader.
Sure. Schrader. Okay, I've been saying it right. Thank good. Okay. I actually had a college. It was it's right here on ISU's campus. It's Illinois State University is Schrader Hall, and it's spelled the exact same way. So that's why I've been pronouncing it Schrader.
Nice.
So we're gonna be back in just about 10 seconds. So just hang out a second, all right?
Okay.
In about 15 minutes, you're going to find out why Kamala Harris has historically low approval ratings. It's because she's black and she's a woman, okay, folks? That's the reason why ABC is trying to blame Kamala Harris's historically low approval ratings on the fact that she is black and a woman. Okay, ABC, whatever you say. We're going to get to that in about 15 minutes. Plus, a Portland woman, she was a victim of this savage attack. And now she's coming out in this viral video She says that it's the city's fault. They defunded the police. And there was a slow police time, and she was brutally attacked by this homeless dude. So she's very lucky to be alive, but she is telling us exactly why this happened to her and why it took 20 minutes for the cops to show up and save her. She's very lucky to be alive. But right now, I want to talk with a young man. He got arrested for reading the Bible. And you're like, wait a second, how did that happen, Kat? Well, he just so happened to be reading the Bible next to some drag queens who were gyrating in front of young children in lingerie. These men were dressed up as Bratz dolls, as I like to call them. You know what a Bratz doll is. They've got the really bright makeup, and these guys were in essentially lingerie, and they were gyrating in front of children. And he was, Marcus Schrader is the young man's name, and he's joining me here in studio. And he was just on the sidewalk. There was a little amplification device that he had, and he was reading a Bible verse. Marcus, thanks so much for joining the program. You guys can be a part of the show by texting in 309-451-9299, or you can see me live in the studio and Marcus on the YouTube channel, Cat Petersen 929, Twitter, Rumble, and Facebook. Marcus, tell me what Bible verse you were reading, how this all kind of transpired from your perspective, and what exactly happened and led up to the point of these cops grabbing you and dragging you off. Did they cuff you?
Yes, they cuffed me. I was reading from Galatians 5. I turned on the speaker. In fact, the beginning of the video that has been spread all over on social media was the very beginning of me starting to read from the Bible. So it was that short of time from me starting to read to the officers handcuffing me. And then they detained me for about an hour or two, took me over to the police station, got my, they booked me and stuff like that. And then they released me with 2 citations, one for amplification without a permit and the second one for resisting arrest. And then they also gave me a warning that if I, for the next 2 weeks, go on any Watertown public parks or on any of their parking lots or anywhere near the parks, actually, that I'm automatically arrested again and charged with state fines.
Wow. Okay. So what exactly were they arresting you for? Was it this amplification device, unlawful use of this amplification device, or was it
I'm not even really sure. I was not expecting to be arrested.
I'm not even really sure. Wow. I mean, if that's wild. They didn't even tell you really what you're being charged with.
They didn't say, no, they didn't say anything. As you see in the video, the officer didn't say anything to me. That was our first time using amplification all day, so it's not like we had received any warnings or anything like that. So our first time using amplification, I was on the public sidewalk outside of the fence. They had a fenced-in area where the drag queen story hour was being held. So I was outside the fence on a public sidewalk using amplification. Our first time doing it, no warnings. Just comes up, doesn't say anything to me, just starts ripping the microphone out of my hand. And then a few moments later, I was handcuffed and arrested.
Wow. And so tell me a little bit about what you were seeing and how far away were you from the drag queens? And can you tell me what the drag queens were doing, and were you looking for a fight?
Yeah, well, the fence was actually quite a ways away from where the drag queens were doing their performance. So I could see them in the distance, but they were pretty far away. And what they were doing essentially at that time was like a drag queen dance hour, which has been interesting the last couple of years. About 2 years ago, it used to be drag queen story hours. Drag queens would read the books to children. More and more lately, it's been turning into drag queen dance hours and less of story time. And so, they did have a drag queen story hour early in the day. That lasted, it wasn't very long. And then the other 2 shows were dance hours that probably lasted half an hour each or something along those lines. So that's what I was seeing. The children were giving dollar bills to the drag queens. The drag queens were, dancing in sexual ways in front of the children. And the police were all standing there watching this go on. We brought to the police's attention the statute, the ordinance, the city ordinance that criminalized that behavior that the drag queens were doing. One of our guys actually attempted to file a complaint about the drag queens based off of that city ordinance, which very clearly outlaws what the drag queens were doing in the public park. And the police refused.
But none of them got arrested, just you, right?
Correct.
Okay. None of them got arrested for, I think what in Wisconsin law, I looked up the law. What it says is that it's illegal to do sexually explicit actions or sexually explicit performances in front of children, something like that. Wow. So Galatians, and part of this question I wanted to ask you was, hey, were you looking for a fight? Were you wanting to get involved with these did you want to address these drag queens and try to have a conversation? What were you doing there? Why even show up at all?
Yeah, we were there to be a public witness against what was going on. We were passing out tracts and preaching and holding signs and things like that. I definitely wasn't expecting the officers to come and arrest me. I did expect there was a handful. In fact, the ones who arrested me and the one who grabbed the mic from my hand, they were kind of acting very hostile to our group all day. Specifically, one of them had like shoved into a guy in our group. Another one had told one of the guys in our group to his face that he was actually going to be more harsh towards our group than he was to the drag queens and the LGBTQ group. And his reasoning for saying that.
The cop said
Yes, the officer said that to us. His reasoning for that was because they have a permit for this park. But at the time when I was preaching, I was outside the fence, outside their permitted area on the public sidewalk. So yeah, I was expecting a bit of hostility probably from those cops just because of the way they had been acting all day. But I was not expecting to be arrested, and I guess I wasn't looking to be. So.
Yeah, and so was it just you who was arrested and cuffed, or did you have friends that were also cuffed?
I was the only one who was cuffed. I think 3 others were told that they were under arrest and escorted off the park, but they weren't taken to the station or booked or anything like that. But they were, I think one of them was let free and the other 2 were received citations. One of them was Nick Prowl. His videos have been getting around online a little bit too. And essentially what he was doing was trying to get on recording what the drag queens were doing. He wasn't preaching. He wasn't reading from the Bible. He wasn't saying anything. He was just walking around with his phone, trying to record what the drag queens were doing. Like a few people from their group started coming up and harassing him, dancing in front of him, saying different things like that. And he, in the video, you can see he tries to walk around them and avoid them, but they continue to follow him and harass him. And so the police see that, and they came over and they arrested Nick and let the other 2, just go free. So
And like really what that is, it's also a violation of like freedom of the press, like First Amendment, right? But he was essentially acting as a press, right? Now, people will sit there and say you have to be an official journalist with press credentials. That's all crap. The United States Supreme Court has shut that down a lot because there's independent journalists out there who don't have to be necessarily a part of this corporate structure, and you can go out and be a video and essentially be a member of the press. You have the right to do that. So what he was doing wasn't even really, preaching or anything. Like, he was just trying to document what was going on at this it's a public park, right?
Right.
It's
yeah.
like private. It's a public park. People go there and
Public park, and the event was public as well.
and free and open to the public. Yeah. Amazing. So one thing I wanted to ask you, you talked with the city council and you gave a powerful speech in the 6 o'clock hour. I played a bit of that because I've got you here. I just want to ask you, there was a Nazi group, something about Nazis that you were talking about with the city council. Can you explain what group was there? Was it an affiliation with the drag queens? Was it an affiliation with your group? Who was there that were Nazis?
I don't think they're affiliated with any of the groups there. They just showed up dressed in all black, carrying flags with swastikas on them. And they showed up. Apparently, they're based in Waukesha, which is interesting because that's where I live. And I've never heard of them before, never seen them before. Apparently, they protest events like this. But I've been to probably every LGBTQ event in southeastern Wisconsin the last several months. And if I haven't been there, one of my friends have been there. And so never before have any of us heard of them, seen of them, anything like that. So it's a little interesting that they show up. They essentially show up for about 20 minutes, got the attention of the news, got some footage of themselves. I think they did a couple interviews, if I remember correctly. And then they did quite a few odd chants like hang the pedophiles, and then just chanting blood, blood, blood over again, things like that. And so that's what they did. They kind of garnered the attention of the news and the media for about 20 minutes, and then they left. And we didn't see them the rest of the day. So we were there. It was an all-day event, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. They showed up for about 20 minutes. Never seen of them before, never heard of them afterwards. And then all of a sudden, all over the news, and even our governor tweets about it, essentially grouping in everybody who was protesting that event with the Nazis, and trying to make it sound like if you protest this event, you're with the Nazis. And so at that city council meeting, it was actually interesting. I'd say there were probably about 30 to 40 Christians or conservatives on our side of the issue at that council meeting, maybe 5 to 10 LGBTQ activists. And those LGBTQ activists, what they were doing was they would go up there and say, let's not forget that these people were on the same side of the fence as the Nazis. And they were trying to group us in with the Nazis, the Nazi group that was there. And so that's the context of my speech. I get up there and I kind of correct a lot of that thinking.
Yeah, well, they were trying to falsely connect probably your group and try to draw some sort of dot or connect some sort of dots between your group but you guys weren't even really a group. Is it just, are you in like an official group? And were you there on behalf of an organization?
No, we're just a group of Christians. We've got a group called Warriors for Christ. We'll organize different events and stuff like that, but we're not an official organization or anything like that. We do have a YouTube channel that will document some of that stuff, and we've hosted a conference or 2 conferences and a couple different events. But that was the group that we were out there with, and then also just people from my church, Mercy Seat Christian Church. So.
Interesting. So another piece of this that you talked about in your powerful speech that you gave to the city council, you said, I want to make sure that everybody knows that I'm willing to have a conversation with the other side. And you said that we were called a hate group, quote. We were told that we don't want to understand the other side. I just want to set the record straight. I'm more than happy to have a conversation with the other side. And joining me in studio here, Joanne Knitmeyer. So I found you on Facebook and I was like, wait a second, we've got a mutual friend. That's pretty cool. And you referenced the speech debate team in your powerful speech at the city council meeting. So tell me about the speech debate team, Joanne. Feel free to chime in. First, let's visit with Joanne. So tell me about the speech debate team and how you do know each other.
Absolutely. So I watched Marcus grow into great capability in his speech and his debate. Our son competed in the same league with Marcus, and for lack of my job, I didn't get to judge him too often because I sat in the tabulation room, but I would always see how well he was doing in those tournaments. And watching these young men speak their voice is critical, and learning how to hear that other side and talk against it. And so when he referenced that in the speech, that was exactly that. Our son and Marcus competed in a 6-state region and spent tons of time at tournaments. Those tournaments were 3 to 4 days, depending, and they were all day, 7 a.m. to 11 o'clock at night events, and engrossed in many conversations where they honed in those skills. So I know firsthand that he is living out the mission statement of what that speech and debate organization is, and he is doing it in remarkable fashion.
Yeah. So tell me a bit, Marcus, about your, ability to have conversations with people. People will sit there and say that you were trying to start a fight by simply, amplifying your voice a little bit. I looked at your amplification device. I'm a bit of a nerd when it comes to that stuff. You're not getting a whole lot of amps with that. So it's not like super loud. You know what I mean? When you look at it from an audio standpoint, I'm a bit of a nerd, and I was looking at it and I was like, they're getting them on amplification devices, and I'm like, that's a little boom box. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm like, you're not really like, and if these drag queens were so far away, right, like you were saying, and they were inside the park, you were outside of the park. I mean, I don't even know if the drag queens would have been able to hear you with something like that. You were really just talking to people outside of the event with an amplification device like that. If I had to guess, I don't know. I'd have to look at it closer, but according to the video, I was like, a little amplification device. It's not like anything huge. You weren't like blasting. It wasn't a concert or anything like that. But tell me a bit about your speech and debate days and how that contributes to your thinking when you're out at events. You said that you've been out to LGBTQ events, kind of counter protesting them. How does this speech and debate team conversation um, ability that you have contribute to the conversations you have out there at these things?
Yeah, I started speech and debate when I was a freshman in high school. My first year, I wasn't the best. In fact, I was pretty bad. By the time I was in my last year, though, I was pretty good at it. And so once I was graduating, I was kind of like, oh, I guess that's over. And I was expecting, my speech career to be on pause for a while. But then I started getting requests to speak at different events. So I've spoken at different churches, different political meetings. I did the opening prayer for Rally with Ron DeSantis and just different things like that. Started to grow some of those connections. And so I guess something I really liked in debate was being able to have cross-examination, being able to ask people questions. So typically in one-on-one conversations, it's best to, ask them questions, because just ask them questions about what they believe, because sometimes they don't even know what they believe. They've been fed rhetoric from the left. They've been fed rhetoric from the media. And so they're kind of regurgitating some of those catchphrases and some of those chants and things like that. And so just ask them a question about, wait, what do you mean by that specifically? Or a simple question like when they're saying love is love, or you guys stand against love, just ask them, what is love? And ask them questions like that. And most of the times they don't have an answer. Sometimes they do, but it causes them to think. And then also, if they do have an answer, it helps you understand their position better so you can more appropriately respond to it.
Yeah, well, and when people say love is love, I'm curious your thoughts. What is love? Do you have an answer for that?
Yeah, I mean, there are different forms of love, but overall, I think love is the sacrificial giving of oneself for others. Laying down your life for another is the greatest example of love that Christ gave us, and that's what we're called to emulate in the world. So it's a deep care and concern for others that leads to sacrifice on their behalf, leads to action. So I think that would be probably the most general, basic definition.
Oh, yeah. And before we cut to break here, and I don't know how much time you have. Do you want to stay over? Because we can continue out the 8 o'clock hour if you're interested, Marcus, if you'd like.
Let me check real quick. Take 1 second.
But before we take the break, what I'm going to read here is what my Corinthians, 1 Corinthians, I think you're going to appreciate this as a fellow Christian. 13 verses 4 through 8, right? Love is patient, love is kind, love does not envy, love does not boast, it is not proud, it does not dishonor others, it is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered, and it keeps no records of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices in the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. And I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know if grown men gyrating in front of young children in thongs is necessarily I don't think it really fits that definition given by 1 Corinthians there. I'm just going to be honest. I don't think that's love.
Even one of our signs has that verse, love does not delight in evil, but rejoices in the truth. So we have different signs like that. So. But yeah, I can stay that way.
Stay over. All right. Well, we're going to be back for the live stream, folks. We're going to continue talking with Marcus. So you guys are going to want to tune into the live stream, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Rumble. And then a little bit later, we will be getting into a conversation about this Portland woman who was brutally attacked by a homeless man. And now she's coming out and saying it's the city's fault for defunding the police. We're going to continue our conversation with Marcus on the other side. This is the Morning Buzz. All right. Good morning, folks. Thanks so much for tuning in. Be sure to smash the like button, subscribe to the channel. Just look it up, Cat Petersen 929 if you're on Facebook, Twitter, or Rumble. Smash the Rumble button. We've got Marcus Schrader here, and he was arrested for reading a Bible verse. Now, one thing I wanted to ask you, Marcus, was, hey, people are coming after me and saying that, hey, Kat, you're only against police when it comes to white Christians being wrongfully arrested. What would you say about a black person being wrongfully arrested? It seems like you're not so for the police. Are you angry at the police who arrested you? And tell me a little bit about this, what's with these police? What's with these cops?
Yeah, I'm not angry with them. It's pretty hard to get me to be angry, but I think the problem with these police was they very clearly had a personal bias. They weren't upholding the law. And in regards to police abuse and things like that, some people saying, like when you mentioned that you only are against the police when they're attacking you or attacking Christians. I think the problem with the defund the police movement and things like that isn't necessarily that there aren't any problems with the police department or different police officers, or that police abuse doesn't exist, but their movement is focused on tearing down the police, and they don't have anything to replace it with. They don't have anything to build back with, and so essentially all they know what to do is how to burn down cities. They don't know how to build cities. Building cities takes building families. Family is the foundation of society, and so in order to actually build a healthy society, you have to have a Christian worldview, and they don't have that. They lack that. So all they know what to do is how to burn, how to tear down, instead of actually, hey, there might be some problems here. Here's how we could improve the police force or make it better or correct these problems. All they know is, oh, we don't like it, so let's burn the entire thing down. And then when the police are gone, they don't have anything to replace that with.
Right. Yeah. And, I think at this point now, I wanted to ask about your area there. So it's called Watertown, Wisconsin. Is that kind of a Democrat control? Like, do you have a Democrat mayor? Do you have Democrat council members? Do you think you were heard at the council meeting?
I'm actually not the most familiar with Watertown. I live in Waukesha, which is about 30 to 40 minutes from Watertown. I came out there for that event, but I've become more aware with them. Like, actually being out there for that event was kind of my first interaction with the city and kind of seeing how they work. So I guess I don't have the best taste in my mouth for what Watertown is like. But yeah, I'm not actually sure exactly. I do know it's a smaller town. I don't know exactly what the layout is or the landscape in regards to conservative versus liberal and things like that.
Okay. Well, then, and also what I wanted to ask you was, what's next? So, are you going to have to, go to court? Or are you going to have to try to fight these charges that you don't even really know what you've been charged with, which is, crazy in and of itself. It's like they did not make clear what they were arresting you for,
Right.
which is huge. But what's next for you? Do you have to go back to Watertown?
Yeah, I've got I've got a few different law firms that have reached out to me that I'll probably be picking one, and then we'll be taking this to court, and I'll be challenging the fines, and we'll move from there. See what exactly we do in regards to the city and the way that the police department was negligent in their duty in watching these drag queens, sexually abuse these children, and so yeah, that's kind of what's next is picking a law firm, taking this to court, challenging these fines. They haven't taken away the fines or anything like that. So I still have those two things: the amplification without permit and then resisting arrest. I was told that I received the resisting arrest charge because my muscles tensed up when the officer grabs my arm from behind my back. So I was not.
Wait a second. That's insanity.
Marcus, as I watched that, all I could think of is you were so focused on the cop with the microphone that you weren't even aware what the guy behind you was doing. And so, like, to me, it was like, what would these guys do if they were police in Chicago? Because that certainly didn't look like resisting arrest on our end.
Yeah, that's. I mean, your arm, like they bent your arm backwards, like they were putting you in cuffs, right? And like anytime you move somebody's arms, their muscles are going to ripple in some sort of way because it's movement, right? Like you're like what? Your muscles weren't supposed to move because the guy was moving your arm? Like you were moving it. You know what I mean? Like you were moving my arm, dude. Oh,
Right.
that's wild. We're gonna be back here in just a moment for our radio friends. It's a real short break, probably about like 2-3 minutes. If we could just go through those two questions, what's next for you, and uh, um, the charges, the resisting arrest charge that's you're facing. I think that would be good for our radio fans, and then I'm going to let you go because I know you're busy.
Okay.
But it was great to meet you. We're going to be back here for our radio friends in just a second.
Good to
Hang on
see you.
one sec.
Yeah, good to see you too.
Good morning. Hey, this is the Morning Buzz. Thanks so much for tuning in to Cities 92.9. And you can always text in, be a part of the show, 309-451-9299. Imagine your child has a ding dong thrown into their face from a drag queen, because that's exactly what was going on in the public park in Wisconsin, in Watertown, Wisconsin. And a young man, powerful young man, Marcus Schrader, was there, and he was arrested for being, pretty far away from these drag queens and just reading some Bible verses on a microphone. And he was arrested. He's joining me here on the program. You can see us live, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Rumble. Marcus, I'm curious, what's next for you? Do you have to go back to Watertown? You live in Waukesha. Do you have to go back to Watertown and address these charges in some sort of courtroom? What's going on?
Yeah, so I have a few law firms that have reached out to me. I just have to pick one, then we'll take this to court and challenge it.
And challenge it. Yeah. So you've got some law firms that have reached out to you. So what exactly are you going to try to challenge? Are you challenging the charges? Are you going to try to say that the police department was acting unlawfully?
Yes, I haven't talked to a lawyer yet myself, so I'm not sure exactly what the best legal action is, but definitely want to challenge the charges, and then also in some way hold the police department and the city accountable for what they allowed that day, their negligence of duty. There are laws on the books that very clearly outlaw what they were doing, and so instead of arresting the real criminals, they arrest those who were in some way doing what the police should have been doing, was standing against this. And so kind of holding them accountable for that is what I'd like to do as well.
Mm. So you were telling me a little bit about this resisting arrest charge. Now, I've seen the video a couple of times. It's gone viral, where you have the microphone in your hand and a small little amplification device. And there was a cop that ripped that microphone from your hand. Tell me about this Were you resisting arrest? I don't know if they told you that you were under arrest, and then I don't think that you were resisting arrest according to the video.
They didn't even tell me that I was under arrest. They didn't give me any warning. They just grabbed my arm and started handcuffing me. And it took me a moment. I was like, oh, wow, they're actually going to arrest me. I was not expecting that. And so, he just grabs my arm from behind. I was kind of focusing on the cop in front of me. Didn't really realize who was grabbing my arm. I figured it was a police officer. And so, then it took me, a couple seconds to realize, okay, they're arresting me. The officer says, "Do not resist," which was interesting because I wasn't. But we actually have that from multiple different angles. Multiple people were recording. There's that one video that kind of went viral that was, you see my front, but we also have some from the other side, where you can clearly see that there was no resisting. I didn't pull away. I didn't go limp, nothing like that.
Mm. And somebody told you about your muscles. So in the video, you can kind of see your muscles ripple a little bit out of your t-shirt after your arm was taken from in front of you to behind you, and you can see your muscles ripple. Who told you about your muscles rippling and that being the reason why you were charged with that?
Yeah, the officer that handcuffed me as he was walking me off, I asked him, what I was being charged with, what laws I broke, and he said resisting arrest. Which, first off, at the very beginning, that's kind of interesting. I'm trying to figure out why I was being arrested, and he tells me resisting arrest. And then he says amplification without a permit, but I didn't know that, you just walk up to someone using amplification on a public sidewalk and arrest them without giving them any warnings, or typically at the very most, if they don't heed your warning or something like that, it's a citation or some sort of fine at the very most. And so, he still didn't really answer my question well on why I was even being arrested in the first place. But then when I asked why I was being charged with resisting arrest, he was the one that said, your muscles tensed up. And so that was the reasoning he gave for why I was being charged with that.
And I just find that so funny because in the video, your muscles I don't think that they tensed up. You can see like a little bit of ripple, right? But it's clear that because it's it's because your arm was being pulled from the front of you to behind you, and like the movement in your arm, there's like movements that you can't control, right? Like those are just your normal muscles doing what normal muscles do. And it's just incredible that he even said that. And I mean, the officers blatantly told you that they were treating you differently than the drag queens, because they had a permit, but you were on a public sidewalk. And I don't know what the city ordinances are. I've gotten into trouble with amplification devices before. Not trouble, but people have said, I know the laws here. As far as in my community, what the amplification rules are, it varies depending on what city you're in. But amplification device, the device you had, I don't think was like it wasn't like this huge speaker. It was like a tiny little boombox, right? And I don't know how he could have gotten you on that. It seems like a citation at best. But yeah, Marcus, thanks so much for joining me. Anything else you'd like to add? How do we find out more about you? And I don't know if there's any kind of way we can help you with your lawsuit. I know you haven't even picked a lawyer yet or anything like that. So is there anything that we can do? Do you have a YouTube channel?
Yeah, we have a YouTube channel, Warriors for Christ Studios, it's called. And so we'll be posting updates about my case and just how this goes on there, as well as, our future ministry events. And then we've also just started up a podcast. We haven't posted our first episodes yet, but they should be up in either this week or next. And so, that's how to stay in contact with what's going on. Warriors for Christ Studios on YouTube, our YouTube channel. And I guess just last word, I think it's important for Christians across America, young Christians, Christians of all ages, to realize that the reason why we're here today is because we haven't taken a stand earlier. And so it's time for us to actually take a stand in this area, to take a stand in the culture. I think it was Sophie Scholl. She was a Christian who resisted the Nazis in Nazi Germany. She said that how can we expect righteousness to prevail when there's hardly anyone willing to give themselves up for a righteous cause? And so if we think about that and we look at what's going on in America today, of course, the left and the LGBTQ movement is prevailing and destroying the family. It's because the church and the Christians have been silent. We've been hiding inside the four walls of our church buildings. And it's time to take that gospel and not hide it under a bushel anymore, but actually take it to the dark areas and take it and put it on a lampstand out in the city. And so, that's our call to Christians, is that it's time for us to say enough is enough and really to take a stand for truth in the public square.
Oh, gosh, you're so right. Church isn't just on Sunday, and we have to get out there in the public square and start spreading the gospel and really just engaging in conversation with these folks, because a lot of these folks, these drag queens, leftists, whatever you call them, right? I just call them evil. They don't even realize that they believe these, they don't even understand what they actually believe in. And if you just sit them down, read to them what love actually is from 1 Corinthians, then it starts to become clear what love actually is. And they don't even know, what they're talking about a lot of the time. So Marcus, thanks so much for joining me. We got to cut to break, folks, but you are listening to the Morning Buzz. Thanks so much for tuning in. Cities 92.9. You can see us live in the studio, YouTube, Facebook. Send in some comments. We've got a comment here from Justin. He says, that young man is invited into our town anytime, and I will stand with him. I'm not a huge faith-based man, but the more craziness that happens, the more I agree that we need faith in our lives. Wow. So yeah, changing hearts, changing minds. That's what Marcus is doing, and that's what we try to do here at Cities 92.9. We'll be back on the other side. All right, thank you so much, Marcus. I'll kick you out now, but you have a great rest of your day. And I'm telling you, Godspeed. God is with you, and I'll be praying for you and your family and your lawsuit here. Okay.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Have a good day.
Stay strong. Praying for you too. Paul says he's doing the same.
Awesome. Thank you, Mrs. Kniper.
You're welcome.
Okay. All right. Well, you guys, we are going to be back. I've got a few things that I want to run through today, specifically Portland, Oregon. There was this woman who was brutally assaulted by a homeless man, and she's saying that it's the city's fault. We'll be back in just a little bit. Good morning. Hey, thanks so much for tuning in to the live stream. If you're watching, go ahead and smash that like button. My good friend David Paul Blumenshine joining me in studio, and he is got a show Sunday from 1 to 3. You guys are going to want to tune into via YouTube. You can find him at the DPP Show on YouTube. Also, check him out on Twitter. He's got Twitter. He's got Facebook. Blah blah. So, he's going to be David Paul Blumenshine Show Sunday 1 to 3. David,
Sunday
how are you
1 to
doing this morning?
I'm doing well, Kat. So I take it we're streaming right now on Facebook.
Yes, we're
You
streaming.
got it. Well, you know what, Kat? I have been listening to Mark Levin's little outtakes from Rumble. I encourage you to go and subscribe to his channel too, because he does a great job of promoting Cities 92.9, the News and Talk Bloomington Normal and beyond. And this one with Vivek is pretty amazing. He puts Vivek on the stand, basically says, make your appeal. The more I hear Vivek,
I'm scared.
I mean, I'm impressed. I'm not scared. I don't think the time is not now, but as far as a vice president, there's only one vice presidential candidate after listening to this guy over and over again.
You're going to have to read DC Drano.
I does he not like Vivek?
I don't think he likes Vivek, but I like Vivek. I haven't
Yeah.
seen anything that has been like too crazy about Vivek Ramaswamy that is.
No, I think if he passed the Mark Levin, I mean, bless DC's heart, obviously, because I think he's got a passionate heart for America, but he's not Mark Levin.
We're taking the conversation to our radio, folks, so stay tuned. And if you're watching, smash that like button. (309-451-9299). You can text in to the morning buzz. And that was a great explosive interview I had with Marcus Schrader about how there was a Bible verse that he was reading, and then he was arrested by some cops because he was reading a Bible verse. But joining me now in studio, David Paul Blumenshine. You can see us live in the studio, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Rumble. We're everywhere. Be sure to subscribe to my channel, Cat Petersen 99. But oh boy, my channel. It is not anywhere near the DPB show, because the DPB show on YouTube needs to be subscribed to. You guys can subscribe to him and catch his show live every Sunday from 1 to 3. And Mark Levin, that's who we've been talking about here in studio today.
He was on Fox and Friends. I encourage everyone to get out there, listen to indicted over and over again. It's just a game because they know they've waited 2.5 years to come up with all of this. But obviously this
Mark
J6
Levin shared out with this folks was this Rob McDonnell case, where he was a Virginia Republican candidate, I think for the presidency. I'm not too sure, and maybe you would know because I wasn't in politics at that time, right? Obviously, I was a little wee.
Yeah.
I wasn't able to vote, so I wasn't plugged in. But Levin had Rob McDonnell on his show, and he was talking with him, and he was peeved off, Rob McDonnell, about how Jack Smith went after him years ago on these bribery charges that were all trumped up.
The failed Jack Smith, who's a prop of the Obama administration, the Biden crime family. I mean, the list goes on. But the other thing is, Kat, besides Levin and his Rumble channel, go out to Rumble. Here we go, folks. We've created a parallel economy. And it's critical we do so, because you're not going to hear any of this information. I tried searching for montages of the Democrat Party and their ranting about the stolen elections and the gaming of machines. And
I have one.
Yeah, and it's the great compilation of the Democrats denying election results. And it goes on for like
I
20
think
minutes.
20 minutes.
You want to listen
20
to it?
minutes. Yeah. Well, just a little bit.
Just
They,
a
they
little
said,
bit.
well, Hillary's never said that the elections were stolen. Oh, no, just multiple times. Well, then again, the Bidens never knew that the Hunter Biden laptop was actually what? Real?
Hmm. So let's take a listen. Here we go.
Virginia just stopped using touchscreen computer voting because it's so vulnerable.
Right.
We need to look at all the voting machines. Every Secretary of State needs to be, assisted in making sure that they are not being hacked and attacked.
I continue to think that our voting machines are too vulnerable.
But researchers have repeatedly demonstrated that ballot recording machines and other voting systems are susceptible to tampering.
Even hackers with limited prior knowledge, tools, and resources are able to breach voting machines in a matter of minutes.
In 2018, electronic voting machines in Georgia and Texas deleted votes for certain candidates or switched votes from one candidate to another.
The biggest seller of voting machines is doing something that violates Cybersecurity 101, directing that you install remote access software, which would make a machine like that, a magnet for fraudsters and hackers. These voting
So there you have it.
Fraudsters. Gaslighting. This is all these folks do. They have been the masters of gaslighting. What they say, what they're accusing you of doing, they have always been doing. What they're accusing Donald Trump of doing is what they were doing. And they're trying to now lay this on him. It's
Well,
it's disgusting.
and in the indictment itself, I'm just going to read it to you. Third paragraph, Jack Smith, he says that President Donald Trump, like all the other Americans, like Americans everywhere, had the right to speak publicly about the election and even claim falsely that he had won. So he writes this in the indictment, but he's indicting him anyway. So what are you indicting him on? Because you're saying that he had the right to go there and speak publicly about how he thought that the election was stolen.
Yeah.
So
and he had the right to
do
assemble.
it.
He had the right to assemble and gather. And you know what? You know my opinion of this. It's political theater. He got on the phone and told Nancy, I'm going to bring 10,000 troops to protect the Capitol. No, I don't think so. That's bad optics. Wouldn't look good. Bottom line is when it was time for the inauguration of the current gentleman who is occupying the office,
Former Vice President Joe Biden.
Yeah, former Vice President.
Office.
Yeah, former Vice
let's
President.
not call
Because
him
I don't
that.
even know former Vice President because with the Obama era, I have no idea. This has been in play. The way these folks have undermined the constitutional republic.
And they bring out Jack Smith to do it, David Paul. That's what really peeves me off about the whole thing is Jack Smith constantly
He's a hitman.
has been drug out here in United States history to go after political opposition.
Unjustifiable. A court will, like I said, it's unfortunate that the Supreme Court's going to have to step in and bring some resemblance to decency and normalcy.
But they already did. Like, that's the thing. The Supreme Court already warned him.
Yes.
It said, quote, "The uncontrolled power of criminal prosecutors is a threat to our separation of powers." They rebuked Jack Smith years ago when he brought all of
They
this
did.
against
They're going to have to
Robert
come out and do
Stein.
it again. Another Supreme Court, obviously. Kat, the bottom line is these folks are never going to stop until we defeat them. Rush Limbaugh, in the immortal words of Rush Limbaugh, they need to be crushed and defeated. It's none of this allowing them, this compromise, this go along to get along. No, they have one goal in mind, and it is not to represent the Declaration of Independence of this country and the Constitution of the United States of America. It just isn't in their playbook.
If you're watching right now, go ahead and smash the like button on YouTube, Twitter, Rumble. Joining me, David Paul Blumenshine. He's got a show this Sunday, 1 to 3. It goes live. You brought up Rush Limbaugh. This is Rush Limbaugh predicting that Donald Trump was going to be tossed off that ballot. It was one of his last shows. Here we go.
I know they desperately want Trump gone, and I know that they desperately want it codified that Trump cannot run again, because make no mistake, they remain scared to death of you, and they remain scared to death of Trump. Trump, 75 million, 80 million votes. And I'm going to tell you, you're not going anywhere. Even if Trump does, you're not. They can't separate you from Trump. And more importantly, they can't separate you from the ideas. They can't separate you from MAGA. They can't separate you from Make America Great Again, which I think remains one of our big campaign strengths going forward.
Yeah. So
I
that was,
love it. Thank you. Can you send that to me? Because
Sure
I'd
will.
like to play that on the DPB show on Sunday. You know what? The left, you know what they're driven by? The Communist Manifesto.
they're a bunch of Marxists.
Sal Alinsky's Rules for Radicals. Though that is their playbook. And it's local here with the mayors of both towns. It is in Springfield with J.B. Heyer-Pritzker.
Yeah,
I mean,
no. And he's out there and he's giving non-citizens arresting powers over
Yeah.
United States citizens right now. And he's
non-citizens
saying-
arresting citizens.
He's lying, folks. And I had this pulled this morning, Wire Points, go read it. They talk about how DACA recipients are actually illegal immigrants. They're protected from deportation through the program. However, that doesn't give them official legal status.
No.
JB is out there saying that he's giving legal immigrants. They're not legal.
They're not legal. Well, because that's what they do. They gaslight. They change everything. They make these innocuous type of statements about fair and free taxes, the working class rights and all these other things. But it's all smoke and mirrors to their ultimate agenda, which is the Communist Manifesto.
I love it. David Paul Blumenshine, Sunday 1 to 3. You can catch it live, YouTube, Facebook, Rumble, Twitter. We're everywhere. Go find David Paul Blumenshine on YouTube. Subscribe to that channel, folks. I do, and I look forward to the little notification that says that David's live in studio. I listen every Sunday, 1 to 3. David, you have a great rest of your weekend.
Go get them, Cat.
Go get them. All right, go get them this weekend. And always remember that we love you at Cities 92.9. So be sure to go visit our website. If you have a business or want to advertise with us, you can hit the advertise button on cities929.com. I love you. God bless you. Bye-bye.